Happy belated Valentine's Day. Thank you. Happy Love Day. Happy Heart Day. Valentine's Day is a day to eat lots of heart candy and to appreciate one's sweetheart, whether that be husband or wife, boyfriend or girlfriend, family or friends, or all of the above. God is about love too. God is love, and God commands us to love. Jesus sums up the entire law in 2 commandments. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. And a second like it, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these 2 commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Jesus is the new Moses in Matthew's gospel, and Moses was the lawgiver of the 10 commandments. In our Deuteronomy reading, Moses tells the people and us that if you obey the commandments of the Lord your God, you shall live and God will bless you. The way of life and prosperity is to obey the 10 commandments. What are the commandments? You shall honor mother and father. You shall keep the Sabbath. You shall not kill. You shall not steal. You shall not covet your neighbor's spouse, or your neighbor's stuff. The 10 commandments are also known as the law, and they are a guide for healthy community life. The Big 10, as I like to call them, are instructions for life. And keeping those commandments leads to life. And behind each commandment, there's a gift. Behind honoring father and mother is the gift of parents. Behind keeping the Sabbath is the gift of a day of rest, worship, and play. Behind you shall not kill is the gift of life, life for everyone. And behind you shall not covet is the gift of the freedom to hold on to spouse and stuff. And is also the gift to see that all are equal before God. One doesn't need more in order to be blessed. The law, the commandments, are a guide for healthy community life. And we need laws to provide order and protection. Without laws, we would each live out of our own individual needs and wants. The law, you shall not kill, protects us from being killed and protects our neighbor from being killed and protects us from being killers. Life is valued, life is a gift, and God gives us life. The law is a gift so that we as humans can live peacefully with one another. In today's gospel, Jesus extends our understanding of the commandments. Jesus takes them deeper. Jesus says, you shall not murder. Moses said, you shall not murder. Jesus says, you shall not murder, and he's referring not only to the action of actually taking someone's life, but also the murder of insult and anger. If we're angry or hostile or insulting to a neighbor, we're killing them. So Jesus deepens our understanding of sin. Sin is separation from God. Sin is missing the mark. We miss the mark in our thoughts, words, and our deeds. I don't know if you remember the old LBW. We used to say that in the green hymnal in the confession. We used to say that we were sinful in our thoughts, words, and our deeds. We miss the mark. We sin in our attitudes toward our neighbor, in our contempt, our judgment, our anger, our words. These words of Jesus might seem harsh, but there's also gift here. Law is a guide for healthy community life. Law is a gift so we can live peacefully with one another. Why would we want to have hate in our hearts? Why would we want to waste energy, time, and life on hostility toward others? Jesus is offering us freedom here. Freedom from judgment, freedom from anger, freedom from hate. It's difficult sometimes to live this way without anger because all of us experience anger with each other at times. Any of us who have siblings know what that's like. People get on our nerves, but there's also a way forward through it. Let's think about some of the other passages Jesus says. Look to the log of sin in your own eye rather than the speck in your neighbor's eye. In other words, focus on your own sins rather than on other people's. Or how about this one? Don't let the sun go down on your anger, from Ephesians chapter 4. And Ephesians says more. Let no evil talk come from your mouth, only what is useful for building up. Put away from you all bitterness and wrath and anger and slander. Be kind to one another, tender-hearted, and forgiving one another. When I was a kid, I learned this little song. It went like this. Be kind one unto another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, for Jesus Christ's sake, as God forgives you. Doodly-do. Ephesians 4:32. There you go. You can even remember the verse. You see, words can hurt us. They can also heal us. Words can kill someone's spirit. Isn't that why we put up walls with one another? Because we've been hurt by somebody's words. Isn't that why we sometimes wear a mask with one another? We're fearful because we've been hurt or offended. Trying to live into Jesus' words here. Do not murder. Do not be angry. Do not be insulting. Imagine what the world would be like if we did not hate. Imagine what the world would be like if we were kind and supportive and encouraging. Imagine that. I imagine there would be fewer people who would be depressed or hurt by the thoughts, words, and deeds of others. How can we deal healthily with anger? Jesus wants us to live a life lived with abundance. Why would we want to live otherwise? That's the gift here. When I read that gospel this morning, I'm sure you all were thinking, oh my gosh, what is she going to do with that? That's what I was thinking this week too. I can't address all of today's gospel with you because it's really too long a passage. There's too much here. But I do want to say a word about divorce. First, we need to understand the context of Jesus' day. Our gospel says that anyone who divorces his wife, except on the grounds of unchastity, causes her to commit adultery, and whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. When we first hear that, it sounds harsh, but there's actually love and grace here that Jesus extends to women. Husbands in Jesus' day could easily set aside their wives for anything because she did not please him or there was something objectionable about her. And when these husbands put their wives and children aside, they were in extremely vulnerable situations. So most divorced women ended up either begging or prostituting themselves if another man did not take them in. Divorce in Jesus' day was really abandonment. It was men throwing out their wives. Women in Jesus' day were always cared for by man, so either their fathers, their husbands, or their sons. So Jesus objected to this way of divorce, and here Jesus redefines the laws on divorce to make it more difficult for men to initiate divorce. Jesus is ensuring that women will not be in compromising situations. And the gift here is the protection of wives and children. And Jesus raises the status of women. So what he says is actually a good thing in Jesus' day. Wives are gifts to their husbands. Husbands are gifts to their wives. Each is to be treated with respect and love. There is to be mutuality and respect in those relationships. Now we have to take those words and pull them into our context. And we remember that God gives us the gift of marriage. Marriages are intended to provide lifelong companionship between two spouses, to be a place for the procreation, development, and care of children, and for God's people to share and express their sexuality with one another in a mutually committed monogamous relationship. Now, obviously not all of us end up being married or end up in healthy marriages. Now, divorce is not what God hopes for us. Divorce is not what God intends. But life's circumstances can make it impossible for people to keep their promises to one another. And those promises are broken for all sorts of good reasons. We've all failed in loving and forgiving and honoring and communicating with one another as God has loved and forgiven and honored and communicated with us. We are only human. And as humans, we make mistakes. For those who are divorced here today, do not feel guilty. There's nothing positive or productive in guilt. There are terrible marriage situations for many in our church and in our world. And it's understandable that married people sometimes need to end their marriages in divorce. And for most of them, divorce comes with great cost and much pain and deep wounds. And what we as a church offer is our prayers and our listening ears and our compassion to those who are divorced or are going through a divorce. We all know someone or may be that person. And for those who are married, it's the church's responsibility to also support and encourage people in marriage. Now, a lot of times as a church, we fail at both of these. We fail to listen to people who are divorced, and we fail to really support those that are married. God does not intend for marriage to fail. God intends for marriages to thrive. God gives us to one another and gives us the gift of marriage to help us hold on to our commitments to one another. As the people of the church, we can encourage those who are married, support them, listen to them, babysit their kids every so often. My dad's going up to New York to spend a week with my nephew and niece, so my brother and sister-in-law can get away from their kids. Good for him. Hopefully they won't drive my dad too bananas, but we'll see. We are called to support one another in the ups and downs of marriage. This is a tough gospel today. It's a bit of a preacher's nightmare, but anyway. But let us remember that there is gift here. It's the gift of a healthy community life. It is the gift of being able to live peacefully with one another. And always our God is with us and loves us no matter what. And we are called to love one another.